Good evening. I'm calling this meeting to order. This is a Redmond City Council study session held on Tuesday, May 26th, 2026, commencing at 7 p.m. Council members in attendance include Council Vice President Nueva Camina, Councilmember Parsi, Councilmember Forsyth, Councilmember Soni, Councilmember Procria, and myself, Council President Stewart. We are expecting our 7th council member, and I will announce her when she arrives. There are 4 items on our agenda tonight, and the first is a joint meeting with our Planning Commission, followed by amendments to the Redmond Municipal Code 6.36 noise standards, and background on city grant funding for ALPR cameras in Redmond, as well as council talk time. So for this first item, our joint meeting with the Planning Commission, thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to our long-range planning manager, Jeff Churchill, to kick off the conversation. Thank you, Jeff.
All right, and good evening, council members and planning commissioners. It's good to be with you tonight. Each year, the City Council and Planning Commission meet together to review the Commission's work plan and to discuss policy perspectives on one or more topics that will be on the Commission's work plan in the upcoming year. So tonight, I'll provide an overview of the work program and introduce the policy discussion portion of the agenda that Lauren Alpert, who is also here with us, will lead, which focuses on the city's response to Senate Bill 6026. And if you don't know what that is, by the end of the meeting, you will. Okay. In one sentence, the Commission's work program in the coming year focuses on implementing Redmond 2050. Many of you will recognize this slide from the dozens of study sessions, committee meetings, and business meetings during Redmond 2050. And we put it here to remind everybody that Redmond 2050 encompasses a broad set of topics that's shown in the top third of the slide. And for the Planning Commission, which advises the City Council on land use policies and regulations, implementation of those policies can take the form of strategic updates and revisions to the policies themselves, which would be in the top third, development and adoption of functional plans, strategic plans, action plans, such as for utilities, parks, transportation, and others. And that would be in the middle third. And then development and adoption of updates to the Redmond zoning code, which is part of the bottom third of the slide. So this slide outlines some of the key work program items for the Commission in the next 12 months. The Commission elected officers in April and also concluded its review of temporary non-commercial signs in May. That is coming to the Council in June. And the Planning Commission is beginning to review the 2026-2027 Comprehensive Plan Annual Amendment Docket starting tomorrow evening. Next quarter, the Commission will take up the annual code cleanup, receive early briefings on updates to design standards that will then come back again in 2027, and receive early briefings on updates to the tree code, which will come back again later in the year. In the fourth quarter, the Commission will begin review of individual comprehensive plan amendment docket items that are added to the docket by the Council in August, and begin to take up permanent regulations for commercial drone ports, and review code updates related to compliance with House Bill 2418 concerning permit review. That's one of two House bills out of the legislature in 2026 that require a city response that involves the Planning Commission. And then in the first quarter of next year, we anticipate continued review of docket items and permanent regulations for commercial drone ports, in addition to reviewing code updates to comply with House Bill 2266, concerning STEP housing, which is emergency shelters, that's the S in STEP, transitional housing, emergency housing, and permanent supportive housing. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lauren to introduce the discussion topic for this evening, which relates to another bill from the legislature that you saw on the previous slide as individual docket items, because it's one of those.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this evening. So the purpose and key element of SB 6026, it's been discussed here before, is to facilitate construction of housing in commercial and mixed-use zones. I will start there with an overview of SB 6026, so we all have the same basic information. It's intended to facilitate the construction of housing. It's one of the legislative priorities that the state put together this year to address housing unaffordability. And it requires local jurisdictions to allow housing in any commercial and mixed-use zones. It limits the conditions that can be placed on the development of residential uses in such zones, though. So SB 6026 does not imply in industrial zones. It does not require the demolition of historic landmarks. It doesn't apply in any of our shoreline jurisdictions or where local regulations prohibit multifamily or mixed-use development. And it doesn't apply in critical area buffers. The preemption on conditions that can be placed on residential development are also limited. So what does that mean? Cities can continue to require ground floor commercial square footage on 40% of the land area zoned for commercial and mixed use. So we can still require some mixed use. And when calculating the 40% figure, certain land is excluded. So station areas where buildings can be built at least 85 feet, and all of the areas listed on the previous slide. So the ground floor area requirements also cannot be applied to publicly funded affordable housing. So where does that leave Redmond? How does that apply to our area? In Redmond, right now the business park and manufacturing zones do not currently allow housing. That's all. So SB 6026 will require that local jurisdictions allow housing in those zones. So that includes, for example, our southeast, part of our Southeast Redmond Manufacturing Industrial Park. Now in Redmond, the neighborhood mixed use zone has a commercial requirement that does not allow 80-foot tall buildings. So therefore, the city would have to limit the commercial floor area requirement to just 40% of the neighborhood mixed use zone. So one of the things we wanted to discuss tonight, as we look at this regulations and as we've been having this discussion about manufacturing land in Redmond and housing in Redmond, we wanted to ask you, as we explore this docket item, what sort of questions do council member and commissioners have that we can address? For example, impacts to commercial capacity, economic diversity, housing capacity, and what else is important to you as we kind of have this discussion? Since this work is likely to be docketed, it'll be getting started shortly, and the goal is to conclude no later than August 31st, 2027. So I'll turn it over to Council President for a discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, staff. We really appreciate you opening it up for us. So at this time, maybe we could leave it on the, leave for just a couple of minutes, leave the slide, yeah, perfect, which has the prompt for us all. And no particular order here, since we do have commissioners. When you're called on, definitely tell us a little bit about who you are and how long you've been on the commission, so that way the listening public has a chance to hear from you as well. Who would like to kick us off? Council Vice President.
Thank you, Chair. The top, one of the top things I think that the competing is, for me personally, is the impact to housing capacity and economic diversity, because it's quite the needle that we need to thread. I think that one of the things to have I'm going to swap out the word resilient with sustainable economy, because resiliency is going to measure the time that something gets knocked down and how long it takes to recover, and sustainable means that we keep it going. And I think that a key to sustainable economy is that we have that level of diversity to where our overall economy doesn't take a considerable hit because we are so diversified. So I'd like to hear a little bit more on how SB 6026 is going to have an impact to both our housing capacity as well as our economic diversity.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Councilmember Soni, and then we'll go to Commissioner Aparna.
Yeah, with this bill, since our business parks, manufacturing parks, and neighborhood mixed-use zones, they are the primary target for having the new housing. Basically, we want to understand if our existing water, sewer, and power grids in any of these areas, are they going to be enough to meet the demands and the increased residential capacity that we are going to increase? And what's going to be an impact? Have we done any study on that? Or, any other thoughts on some of these things?
Thank you. Commissioner Aparna?
I think for me, it's a question of if we are adding extra housing at the expense of commercial capacity, then there's a trade-off with the complete neighborhood idea that we are at risk of becoming more and more a bedroom community with less and less economic vitality. So knowing exactly where this capacity changes is really key. And we can't forget the idea that all the residents wanted the complete neighborhood. Like, I love the idea. So I think that's the eye on the prize in my mind. So thank you.
Yeah, a lot of head nodding around the room on that one. Councilmember Prakriya?
I would just love to dive deep into the numbers. I know the city of Redmond already has some of the most ambitious housing targets in the region with our 2050 comp plan, and this bill might make us go even over the aggressive numbers that we set. So I would love to know, how far over could we potentially go due to the regulations of this bill, and also with the trade-off that was just mentioned. What can we do to provide alternatives for economic vitality in our neighborhoods, in our core regions, downtown, over Lake, to offset this loss, right? Because we're already very good on housing. We might need to bring up the other levers here.
Thank you. Thoughts or questions? Chair Weston, and I'm doing a terrible job, so Chair Weston, tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been on the commission.
Amazing. Okay, so that's a really hard question to answer because it's actually been several years now. I'm coming into my third year as chair of the Planning Commission, which I really appreciate. It's a great group of people. I want to thank all the volunteer commissioners for all your hard work, and thank you to council for having us. I love the answers that are here so far. I think that there's just been a lot of thoughtful work on the issues so far around housing, around commercial, around our zoning, and around Redmond 2050. And what I actually want to do is bubble up a second about what I'm actually most concerned about in a question like this is process. So in Redmond 2050, I think we were really well grounded in what the community wanted. There was a lot of public feedback options and process. We weren't necessarily getting a lot of people coming to our meetings, but there was a lot of staff outreach. And I think that there was a chance to really slice and dice plans a lot of different ways. This particular state bill really kind of doesn't give us credit for all the hard work that we did to make fair choices in our community. I understand why it's a statewide measure, but when we go to actually look at how to incorporate it, I think it is very important to go back to the community and get their voices. And so there needs to be advance notice of any changes that we're considering making. There needs to be adequate public comment. And if we're not hearing from the community, I think we need to go out a little bit more creatively, the way staff was so creative the first time with Redmond 2050 and figuring out how we condensed all of our zones into so few, so that we can actually make sure we're doing something that serves the community. Because I think fairness is going to be one of the hardest things to get right here. Displacement is a worry, but we want to make sure that if there is displacement and there's new building, that people feel the benefit in their community. And I'm not sure we totally have a handle on that in the Planning Commission right now. I think we were great at Redmond 2050, and this is like 3 steps removed. And so I don't feel like I can confidently say what would be popular and what would be well received by the city and the residents and the people who care about the way Redmond develops at this point. Especially if we're looking at, do we combine industrial with commercial? I don't know. There's a lot of environmental and safety issues there. Do we combine commercial with residential and possibly miss out on commercial altogether in this stage of our growth? That doesn't seem right. So it's just, I want to get a little bit more in touch with the voices now as opposed to the voices 5 years ago when we were really doing the bulk of the Redmond 2050 work, which I think was excellent. I wish the state would give us a little more leeway to see that built, but we are where we are.
Appreciate those thoughtful remarks. Any additional comment or even response to what Chair Weston offered? Mayor Bernie, my apologies.
That's right. There's a lot of people at the table, which is great. Well, first, thank you all. I'm really glad to see you all here and all the work that you're doing. I appreciate your comments around this bill in particular. It was extremely frustrating because of all the good work that you all did and our community did and our staff did on our comprehensive plan. And it did feel like, whichever one of you said it, was taking a step back from the direction that our community wanted us to go. And so all the things you said, and I think that the other thing to keep in mind is the job numbers. Housing numbers are obviously extremely important, but the job numbers are also important. So finding that balance to keep us in the direction that we have intended to go. And I also appreciate your comments around having to do more community outreach, which is great and also slightly frustrating because of all the work that we did do in order to put our comp plan in place when we did. So I just really very much appreciate your work on this. I know it's not going to be an easy task, but you have great staff to help you out. So looking forward to seeing your comments and the results from this.
Thank you. Commissioner Ganger?
One curiosity that I have is we're thinking about, because I share Commissioner Aparna's sort of a little bit of a worry about the economic vitality. It's been a few years since many of the buildings went up, and we have, right, some of our small businesses and larger businesses at the base of those. Does staff, is there a relationship? Are we seeking feedback from the business owners to see, is this working for them? Are they, right, is this profitable for them in the way that we want our businesses to be profitable? Is there anything about the code that's creating barriers for the businesses there, so that as we look at how these next regulations are going to change, we're taking feedback from local business owners to help guide that?
Thank you. I see a couple hands. I'm going to go first to Commissioner Coleman.
I just a small point on this for me is, when we think about economic diversity and commercial diversity, I still get concerned that we end up doing these things and we end up with big box stores. I'm using the big box stores, global national chains, versus really trying to help local people for economic diversity and from a commercial perspective, be able to either move from where they've been dislocated due to building to a place where they can actually do their business, but actually expanding that too and creating some degree of, like, if we're going to do this, enabling those areas to feel like it's really local, not just anywheresville America. That would be my kind of thought there. So.
Thank you. And for the record, my apologies. Councilmember Kritzer joined us quite a while ago. My apologies. Any other hands? Commissioner Aparna?
Yeah, I'm going to stir the pot here. Is it possible for us as a city to go to the state and ask for an exception, given the fact that Redmond 2050 has already done a lot on the housing? And I don't know if there is a way to go and argue our way out of this, but it's just a thought, because I feel that, at least we should try. So there we go.
Well, thank you. And did you have a response to that? Okay, so Councilmember Forsyth, go ahead.
I will share with you that many of us were doing that work during the legislative session because we saw what this bill was going to do to the work we had already done and the vision that our community had set out. So I want to give major props to Director Helland for the work that she did to get this bill to where it is now. And I know there are some thoughts on how we can move forward with it, and I will wait for that process to play out, but I just wanted to make sure that she got her flowers in this moment.
Much appreciate that. And not seeing any hands, I'll kind of chime in myself here, and then we can go for round two. Definitely want to say that I'm so grateful that although we have to do this task that we didn't want to be in the position to do, I do think that the staff have negotiated for us the best possible starting line. And we heard that council recently had our state lobbyist here in the chambers with us, and again reiterated many of the things that were just shared by my colleagues. So I do think we have a place to start the baseline conversation. Lots of folks have already mentioned the jobs and the economics. I'll throw in one more element, which is as we're figuring out, particularly in the neighborhood mixed use zone, what the best use of our 40% is. Also how this interplays with our affordable housing targets, because they're impacted here. And this year we are in the process of renewing our housing action plan and pairing it with the human services plan. So that's work going on here at the same time. I also want to just acknowledge on the public outreach, getting the feedback, and also being strong communicators as a city. That is always on us to continue to improve. But as our partners, I would say the council would love to invite you into spaces that we are holding. So for instance, last week we had our neighborhood park kind of more casual conversation. And if this comes around and it's a timely, we would love to invite you to be at the park or whatever neighborhood we're in or whatever table we're in or whatever community event we are tabling in. We would love to help unlock some additional space for you. Or I'll speak for myself to say I would be willing to work with my colleagues on the council to make those spaces available to you all. And so much more, building on all that we learned from Redmond 2050 and how to hear from the voices we need to hear from most. Yeah. Other comments? Oh, Commissioner Copley?
Thank you. I think if the state decides that they're going to require us to implement SB 6026, one of the questions I would have is what silver linings might be possible. So if we are in that position and there's nothing we can do to get out of that position, could we engage the community to ask, given these change of circumstances, what can we do now with this new information? Can we help you this way? What are the needs? And so if we go back and we engage and we ask what those needs are, there's possibly something that we weren't able to do with 2050 that we would have to do and be able to do because we have this new requirement.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer?
Thank you, and thank you, Planning Commission, for being here. Apologies that I was a little late to the meeting, but just so appreciate all the amazing work that you're doing. Just on this, I think especially Commissioner Coleman brought up around kind of thinking about diversity of businesses and how we cultivate that. I just wanted to raise that as I think just an ongoing conversation, because I think it's what I hear a lot from residents is about our smaller businesses. I know on our council, one of the discussions at our council retreat this year was also thinking about how we can support more affordable commercial in addition to more affordable housing. And I think as we move forward with potentially the impacts of these regulations, we should also think about, in addition to both requirements, if we can't in some places have requirements, what kinds of additional incentives might we look at to be able to incentivize those who are developing our infrastructure to create these? Because we do hear from our residents they want to see this mixture of places to enjoy and go out in addition to places to live, and hopefully have that be in a mixture within our communities. In addition to our neighborhood commercial that hopefully we'll see pop up thanks to our comp plan.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Whittier, do you have any thoughts for us?
No, I'm in agreement with what a lot of folks have been saying. A lot of what we've been wrestling is just really how do you balance the need for housing and preservation of economic vitality, and it's a trade-off, and it's a difficult one because both of them are components of Redmond 2050. So I'd be really curious to see what kind of relief we might have, or as importantly, piling on what Commissioner Copley said, is how does that reality, the SB 60, how does this new law impact the needs of the community? Because I suspect there are going to be some evolutions of that, and I think we owe it to our community members and I'm emphasizing the word community members, to understand what that, how that changes the mindset, how that changes the articulated needs.
Thank you. And Commissioner Forsyth? Councilmember Forsyth? I knew it was going to happen eventually. My apologies.
Glad to be the one to have it happen too. So I'm going to yes and everything that has been said, especially around small businesses and making sure that we're looking at what that displacement would look like for all these different manufacturing areas and all of that. But I just wanted to raise one thing that I've seen be successful in another city is in Orange, California. They have this like artist district where they are live spaces, and every month and every weekend in the summer, and I think even through the winter, because California, they can open up these doors and invite people in, and it's like a whole art walk, and people can sell their wares. So it kind of gets at both that small business community feeling, but also providing housing. So I wonder if there's some elegant solution. There were some creative solutions being batted around already, and that's what made me think of it. So I just wonder what kind of elegant solutions we can come up with that will achieve all of the above, and I look forward to hearing your brilliance.
Chair Weston.
I think we're on the same wavelength here. Because the one thing that I would also, if I can take a second turn, is just to say that I think the thing that would be most important to me is to go back to what do we expect different zones to do in our today view. So if we expect residential to look like this and commercial to look like that, and we have our business parks, et cetera, what are we actually trying to get out of that? And then if there is some clever combination of districts or some overall citywide percentages, like I'm not exactly sure the right way to look at that, but I think a lot of people are not living lives right now where they see a huge distinction between their one person at work and that needs to be over here, and then they're a different person out in their community and that needs to be here, and then they retreat to their home. I think a lot of us live a lot more interesting, complicated lives, and there might be a modern solution where we are able to look at that and kind of reframe our zoning. That is a really, really tall order in this time frame, so it's possibly not realistic. But I could see that being a response where we're really rooted in our community values and our goals for the spaces, and then can work towards definitions that account for that.
Thank you. Commissioner Aparna.
I think given this and given what we've heard from the community, one option is to look at different types of housing, and this is to Councilmember Forsyth's point about looking at the architecture differently. So getting case studies where you have, I don't want to call it workforce because that's a sort of a weird angle, but it's a morphing kind of typology. And I know it's been done in other places. It requires a little bit of research, and that also ties into the design standards question, right? But it might be something that we look at in terms of trying to get in both and marry both types of land uses. So it's not a zoning question, it's also a typology question. That's how I would see it, because we don't know how everything's going to change in the future, but having a transformer building is pretty cool. Like, just to make it light, but to give you a sense of how you could envisage something changing. Maybe there's an oversupply of housing at some point and you want to kind of revert back to type. What does that look like? Some kind of modular concept. I don't know. Just a thought for staff to come up with ideas. So, thank you.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Soni.
So there are a lot of open questions, and I believe, this requires a lot of preparation. Like the deadline will be approaching very soon. So questions is we have a lot of commercial spaces which are not yet occupied. Does this bill can impact them? Like builders, they may just, or the leasing companies, they may just realize, okay, this is not getting occupied. Can we convert them into residential? So does that legally allowed now to do that once they have been built? And in terms of our environment, critical areas around like a business parks or manufacturing zones, where are our buffers? Like, we have to protect all those lands so that we are able to, keep some of these things intact. And then third thing is, in terms of, sorry, I just lost my thought. Yeah, we are saying that's a 40% commercial that space is allowed. How we can maximize? Like, currently, if there are mixed zone units, can we maximize that right now to protect that so that we are not losing that spaces? So what we can do as a preparation or be proactive in some of these approaches for us. So I think that would be kind of a questions and tasks that I would propose.
Appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Well, I'll also chime in just to say some of the comments from our most recent speakers inspire me to once again say to the body who's going to start the really hard work. I mean, it starts with you all at the Planning Commission. And did I hear correctly? You guys are back here tomorrow night for your own meeting. So this is 2 weeknights that you've given up for your service to your city. So thank you so much for being here again. I think as you move forward in this body of work, protecting the investment of Redmond 2050 and the desires and the motivations and the place that thousands of Redmond residents participated in building the future community that we want to have for our kiddos. Like I said this last year, but I'll say, be defensive of Redmond 2050 the best you can is important to me. And I've seen that come through in some of your work, because although it feels like some of that process started a long time ago in our current understanding of time, this is a long range plan. And so that work still matters. Whatever we do next, we are building on that prior work. Looks like this conversation, we've had a lot of feedback. Oh, I see one more hand, and then I'll ask, just to preview, I'll ask if there are any other comments on the work plan that's laid out for the commission, or if the commissioners have any questions for us on the council while you're here tonight. So, Councilmember Prakriya.
2 things. One, thank you so much for your work, service to the city. But 2, what is the timeline around formalizing this work plan? I believe it's 18 months the municipalities have since this bill takes effect to change their ordinances. I might be wrong on that. I believe it was 18 months. I'm just wondering, when are we going to see this again?
Jeff, would you like to remind us of the timeline?
Sure, the 18 months is correct. So that's from June of this year. That would be December of next year. If this is a docketed item, because it will require policy amendments and regulatory amendments likely, that's work that, according to our own docketing procedures, would wrap up by the end of August next year.
Thank you. I see a few hands. I'll go, Councilmember Soni. Oh, Councilmember Parker, did you have a follow-up? No, just. Oh, okay. I saw them there. I'll go to Councilmember Soni first.
Yeah, this is very quick. It's like, is there a way we can get an update from now till August 2027, like maybe a bi-weekly or a monthly, so that we know what's going on with this?
Take it away, Jeff.
This will be, I'm sure you'll hear about it a number of times between now and August of 2027.
Absolutely, and it'll work its way through the Planning Commission before coming back to us. Mayor Bernie.
Thanks. Thank you for this really good conversation. I think one of the things I would ask is, as you work through it, if you can think about the challenges with this, because the one thing I do is go back to the legislature and the governor's office and share with them some of the complications of some of the bills that they pass and how it impacts us. I think that we're a very good model because we did do an excellent job with our comprehensive plan, and we are meeting our goals, and we are doing all the things we need to be doing. But this bill in particular posed some challenges, and so I think if we have some real issues that come up with your work, that would be wonderful to share with me so that I can share with others. Thank you.
Councilmember Forsyth.
Do we have time for a rapid fire? What else is on their minds? Just a real quick down the line.
We could, if that's how the group would like to proceed. I did kind of open it up for if there are other comments on the work plan or questions for the council.
Other hot topics?
Yeah. Okay, I'll go ahead and, okay, I see a hand. So Chair Weston, go ahead.
All right, I'll be brave as chair and go first. I've been hearing a lot about the drone issue, specifically people who do not feel it is a delivery question, but who feel it is a surveillance question that will be weaponized against many, many groups in Redmond and the Seattle metro area. There's concern that these fly quite far. There is a lack of confidence that we understand which companies are involved and what their motives are. There is a lack of confidence in the safety precautions that are being taken by the city to ensure that we are keeping people secure, that we're not running afoul of privacy. And I cannot tell you the number of conversations where people are not willing to come forward and talk to the city because they have personal fears for themselves and their family. And this is not an immigration question. This is people who have enough knowledge to look at the situation and the tech that can be put in these drones, and they are scared to pieces. So I've had dozens of conversations in the last few weeks. I am having a very hard time getting people to come forward and put names. They're scared. So please tread cautiously and with a fair amount of sense that this conversation is just getting started. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just go ahead and pause to give context for the listening public. There are currently temporary regulations on land use related to delivery drones, and the council does have a public hearing next week. As the council frequently discusses, public hearings are in themselves a barrier to getting public feedback because they are here, but folks can submit their written comment and the like. Jeff, I'm wondering if I could call on your expertise on the holding of the work plan moving forward. Council is holding this hearing next week. This issue is also on the work plan. So between the hearing next week and when this goes before the Planning Commission, what do those interim steps look like?
Yeah, between the time of the hearing and the time this comes back to the Planning Commission, it's really an engagement and outreach phase. That could include events, that could include questionnaires. We would call on a number of strategies that we used during Redmond 2050 to do outreach to people to learn what is important to people as we put together proposed permanent regulations that would then come back through the Planning Commission for another public hearing.
Great, thank you so much. And with that, I saw that a few more hands were inspired. So Chair Coleman first. Excuse me, Commissioner Coleman.
Not the chair.
Not yet, not yet, never say never.
The one thing for me, and when we look to the transportation plan, and I hear regularly from people, probably some people around the table here, is the situation with electric bikes. Not electric cycle bikes, but mopeds. I've seen personally seen multiple people up and down the trail, not pedaling anywhere and going about 40 miles an hour. And on the roads, et cetera. And we had this whole conversation as we were talking about the transportation part of the comprehensive plan. There are other places like in Marin in California where they've actually passed some laws there to try and stop this and restrict it. I don't know how we stop this, but someone's going to get badly hurt. Sometimes going to get hit and somebody could get killed. And I'm not trying to be overly, trying to dramatize it too much, but I've seen some pretty close scrapes and we need to do something about it pretty soon because someone's going to get injured.
Thank you. I saw Commissioner Aparna and then Vice Chair Woodier and then Councilmember Parsi.
So I want to go back to the drone question just really quickly. Since there is going to be a public hearing and there's so many unresolved questions, I'm wondering if we can hit a pause button on this with a moratorium that I saw in a previous meeting that Councilmember Kritzer suggested. Just because it's a big topic, I think it behooves us to be thoughtful about it. Not to say where the outcome should be, but more like, hey, let's talk about all the questions, get public feedback, understand where we stand. And I think that's really key for something this big because there will be a lot of unintended consequences if we don't think this through. That's my, I don't think it's just my opinion. I've been looking for regulations across. I've read some law articles too. There are concerns, and we need to address them before we shouldn't do a temporary, yes, it should be a temporary pause. That is what I think, but I know that there's a public hearing. I'll probably say the same thing. You'll be tired of me, but sorry.
Thanks for sharing your perspective. Vice Chair Whittier?
I'm going to wait until the public hearing to hear more on the drone issue. Transportation is one that resonates with me. I'm seeing an increase in vandalism and destruction due to the electric motorcycles. I'm seeing it happening to the schools, schoolyards, the bike parks. Yes, people will be injured, but also there's potential for destruction to our property here in the city. So I would love to see more consideration placed around that. That's something that I get really sad when I see the destruction that's happening.
Thank you. Councilmember Parsi?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question about the drones. Looking through our websites, I'm curious if we have an opportunity to consider having an anonymous opportunity for people to share their thoughts. Also, many of the council members offer office hours where you can just sign up and share whatever. So I just wanted to make sure that the public would have that option. Regarding the electric bikes, we recently passed an ordinance that allowed electric bikes on sidewalks. I do still have concerns about that, and I would like to hear more about that, given the speed with which electric bikes move 40 miles and moving faster and faster every day. This is a huge concern, and I have seen many, many reports of actual deaths around the country because of that, and I would be really, really sad if that is on the headlines of the news in Redmond.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Councilmember Kritzer.
On the topic of drones, I do look forward to hearing from the public at the upcoming public hearing and continuing the conversation that we started when we had the interim official control action. And as we discussed at that time, we do still have the opportunity to be able to change what it is that that we decide in the interim at this upcoming action. So I would just also say to planning commissioners, if you have additional thoughts and want to reach out, I'm very interested either via the hearing or one-on-one to be able to share more thoughts on it. I also, as we've seen, we haven't done that many interim official controls during my time on council. But in the other that we did, it really was a process in which the council passed an initial piece, passed it to the planning commission, then came back to us, and I think we went back again, then came back to us again. So just want to, in advance, thank you for the consideration on this issue. And doing the work that you all do to be able to gather public input and to weigh all the nuances of a really complex policy for our community. So just kind of looking forward to the collaborative nature of addressing something very complex and an emerging issue for our community together.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on the work plan or the year ahead? All right, I'll also just offer a couple of remarks on all of the topics that have been brought up in this second half of the conversation. There is more to say on each and every one of them, and including our work. As I mentioned before, our council, we just met with our state lobbyist. She will be back with our chief policy advisor in September when we will begin crafting our state legislative agenda. The e-mobikes, for instance, are an item that we have included in the past as something that we would like the legislature to take action on, as well as some of the other topics that were brought up here. And we will continue. It's what I'm hearing tonight is support for us to continue on with some of that, those priorities in the upcoming session and the work that we're doing with our legislators in the off session. right, we're nearing the end of our agenda. Are there any final thoughts? Looks like we've put a wrap on it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time both tonight and tomorrow night and all year long. Please let us know how the council can support your work or if there's further clarity that we can provide you in the work ahead. Really appreciate it. And thank you to Lauren and Jeff. We appreciate you helping us out tonight and all the work that you do. Thank you. Thanks, guys. All right, well, we will take just a moment here to transition to our next item and thank our guests once again. The second item on our agenda tonight is the amendments to the Redmond Municipal Code 6.36 noise standards. And we have a couple of staff who will join us at the table for this item, including Director Helen, who is the Director of Planning and Community Development, and Jeff, a Long Range Planning Manager, will also be sticking with us. So when you all are ready, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council President Stewart. Good evening. I'm Carol Helland, and I hope you're all having a nice evening. I'm joined tonight by Jeff Churchill, and we're here to support the Council's deliberation on the updates to the noise standards. I'll turn it over to Jeff to provide a brief recap, and then we will actually answer any questions you may have as you discuss the proposal that's before you.
Thank you very much, and good evening again. Staff briefed the council on updates to the noise standards at the May 5th Committee of the Whole meeting, and at that time, council members identified several discussion topics. Staff have provided written responses to many of those topics in an issues matrix that is in your packet for this evening, and so tonight we are seeking council direction on these updates so that we may prepare for council to take final action on those updates. I know in your packet it says June 16th. That's really if everything gets resolved tonight and we're ready to go. If that doesn't happen, then we will make alternative plans, and that's fine. And I'll turn it back to the council president.
Great, thank you so much. Well, to open up the conversation, I'd first like to start with the matrix that was provided and the responses. Are there items from that matrix that folks would like to have discussed before we take on new items? Councilmember Kritzer.
Yes, I'll kick us off with item number one. I think the question around how we, if you can kind of speak to how we arrived at the current set of recommendations around the timing for the hours of noise or of these different regulations. If you can kind of speak to that, I think it would be helpful for the listening public to be able to understand some of the process that led to the current recommendations.
So I can speak to some of the pieces, and then Jeff can speak to some of the balance. Our noise control code was quite antiquated. One, it had been in place for some years without any changes. One of the things that we have been looking for and heard quite a bit about is the noise that is generated from the shooting range that is located in Redmond. That was one of the areas that we did identify as needing some updating. As we have gone through Redmond 2050, our housing densities are increasing, and the expectation of some amount of predictability and quiet time was one that kept coming up for us again and again. The first version that you saw actually eliminated Sundays and tracked very closely to the noise control standards that apply to construction noise, because some of the decibels are similar, some of the disruption is similar. Although the shooting range is there all the time, construction obviously moves around the city at different geographies. I know that Councilmember Stewart is experiencing that right now with 3 construction projects around her home. So what we have also heard was when we released the original proposal that had eliminated Sundays, is we heard feedback from both community members and from the shooting range, and proposed a compromise in the draft that is before you that actually has hours for the shooting range between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, because some of the feedback that we did hear from testimony that was at public comment was that not everyone is able to get to the shooting range to recreate on a Saturday, and that Sunday times would be appropriate. We have had feedback from the neighborhood that the predictability that has been offered by the hours that are in the proposal that's before you now is well received. We know that there are concerns remaining from the shooting range about the reduction of hours on those 2 days, but that's the origin of the changes. Jeff can speak to the changes for the other elements of the proposal.
I'll just add one more piece from the first issue related to gun ranges, and that is kind of the second big paragraph in the response relates to the ability for a gun range and the city to enter into an agreement where mitigation would be provided that reduced the total impact to the surrounding community. And in consideration of reduction of that impact, the hours could be revised compared to whatever is in the standards for that use in the noise code. And that the purpose there is, again, to reduce the impacts in the community, because I think everybody is looking for that.
Great. Did you have a follow-up, Councilmember Kritzer?
Yeah, if I may, I just wanted to underscore two things that I heard in what you both shared, since we have received a lot of public feedback, and thank you to everyone who's come here tonight to listen and who has sent us messages. We really have been trying to listen to the public and be able to hear about what matters, and we have heard I would say, a really wide range of opinions on this topic. And I appreciate trying to figure out kind of what is the right balance here amongst uses in our community. One piece that I heard in email, and I just want to make sure that we underscored, is that what's proposed here is to have hours of operation for ISA if it were ISA, as an example, on both Saturday and Sunday. Because I think we got some messages that thought that I think we're looking at some of the older regulations or proposals potentially. And also, I guess, maybe you could just share a tiny bit more about what that process would look like if there were some sort of mitigation efforts.
So I can speak to that. And just so you know that city attorney and I have been actually meeting with members of ISA and their legal team and trying to walk through. I know you've heard some of them ask the difference between a mitigation agreement and a development agreement. I believe we've gotten to the place actually that a development agreement could be a vehicle, so that might be a change that we would make in the proposal coming forward to council if you would choose to entertain some changes this evening. But the theory behind that is, like other development agreements that you've approved, is that there is a promise made, it's contractual, that if we essentially complete this work, we are given an approval to do something different. So in the context of development that you've seen most recently is that it's been, if we install these utilities and provide these public benefits by way of tree retention or replacement or things like that, you will permit us to construct to the maximum of our code's limitations. And that then it ends up having them optimize on their options, and it has the city receive a public benefit in return. The philosophy here would be the same in that the hours would be shorter than they are currently, but in return for a contractual promise to install mitigation, once that mitigation is installed and proven, those hours might be able to be expanded. And then that contractual arrangement, if you meet certain benchmarks or if you meet certain mitigation standards that are included in the code, then ISA would be able to expand their hours in response to those mitigation changes.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask us to stay on the first matrix item. So are the hands that are up or for this current matrix item, just so we're doing the discussion all at the same time? Thank you. Councilmember Parsi.
I have two questions. One specifically on the mitigations. I didn't immediately see in the plans how the mitigations would be validated and how the city would plan to, I guess, create validation. So if that's a question we can answer, that would be fantastic. And then another question that I have is that from what I understand, the city has listened to the different stakeholders and separately put forward a plan. I was wondering if during the process we had engaged in deliberations between the stakeholders to hear, to kind of allow them to arrive at a mutually agreed upon solution that may be better appealing to either both of the stakeholders, and if that is something that the staff would be willing to assist with.
So on the validation point, that would be the purpose of entering into an agreement, is essentially to make those validation requirements. It's kind of an if-then. If you do and receive mitigation, or if you create mitigation of this type, then you can expand your hours. So the mitigation has to be in place first and proven to meet the standard that you're trying to reach before the hours would be able to be expanded.
I think my question is more around, would the city be responsible for example, performing the measurements for deciding where that measurement would be taken?
So currently, we have the ability to do that. We would have to, if the mitigation as it's currently written doesn't satisfy the council with respect to that, their assurance that that will happen, we can make that more clear. With the second, with respect to the engagement of stakeholders, that has been a little bit of a challenge, and I would submit that it's been more like an effort in shuttle diplomacy, because there hasn't been a lot of effective communication between the neighborhood and the gun range. I think both sides are frustrated with the other, and that just simply hasn't been a constructive conversation. I know that the gun range did hire a public relations person who came and met with the mayor and met with me, and I think has met with some of you, Austin Hicks. But also it emerged that he had contacted a small number of the homeowners associations and not the homeowners associations that had actually been most concerned about the noise. So it was not a complete stakeholder opportunity. We did offer at that time for the city to be involved in future stakeholder conversations, but I have not been contacted again by Austin.
Thank you. I'll move on to the next question. I think it was Councilmember Procria. And you're on the same topic, yeah? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I want to touch on the last bullet point of item 1 in the matrix, connection between maximum permissible noise levels and hours of operation. And I have 2 questions here. Number 1 would be if you could elaborate, Director Helland, on the difference between the 2 agreements that you just described, the one described in this attachment and the development agreement. Sure. Because my concern is that if we go with the agreement described right now in the packet, there is no guarantee for the gun range to, if they were to put forward a significant capital investment. So I just want clarity on the difference between the 2 agreements and how far we are.
So essentially, as this ordinance was crafted, was the mitigation agreement was intended to follow basically the same rules as a development agreement. That has not been a satisfactory answer to the legal team for the ISA. The development agreement, both the city attorney and I had some concerns about using it as a vehicle because it hasn't been used in this format before. It's been a zoning tool. I think we both got to the place that we could be comfortable with
the development agreement being the vehicle, which also then describes the process that has to exist, because ultimately the council has to approve development agreements. They are described under state law, and they are contractually binding on both parties, both the city and anyone else who enters into a development agreement with the city.
I see. Thank you. And have we, just as a follow-up, the other part, what has staff, I guess, made of the argument that, you know, if we were to take the sound from a gun range and compress the hours, that that compression would actually lead to louder sound within that smaller time frame when it comes to the relationship between, you know, maximum noise levels and hours of operation, where right now, if we're classifying this as roughly similar to construction, if we were to actually compress the hours, maybe it would be even louder. What is that relationship?
So we haven't done any noise studies to understand that compression, but what we can tell you is there are a limited number of ranges available. They can't have more than the number of people that they have at the ranges that they have using them at one time. And yes, that noise is going to be more continuous between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., but actually the most important thing from the neighbors that we heard from, and that I think some of you have heard from, is the predictability of having some quiet time in the morning and some quiet time in the evening on the weekends.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Soni?
So during our council conversations, we also had an opportunity to hear from the different HOAs there. And this is again in terms of the number of hours of NNN operations, and while they are proposing the changes and, you know, to give them a permission. If the question is like coming from the noise after hours that we are proposing, but I am not a shooting person, so please, I don't want to make some comments, but suppose if there is a usage of ISA facility without having the like a rapid fire or a high caliber kind of a things, and rather can be limited for usage for like a firearms or like a kind of a rim fire, like, you know, the lower decibel kind of shootings, which is like not very loud and not disturbing the neighbors. Will that be a consideration? I'm just bringing, it's like, you know, if they are not interfering with using those rapid fires and creating the noise pollution at that moment or the disturbance, and then in the meanwhile, they can work on the different proposals that they have put together. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to bring this on the table.
Sure. So what we have also, like, again, what we've heard from the people who live around that area, and I would grant you that many of them have lived there for a very long time, but many of them have moved in recently. The densification of the area has reduced the amount of tree canopy in that area and has is impacting the neighbors differently. So we just, as we densify, complaints increase actually for just about everything. With regard to the shooting range and the decibels, we could study that and we could actually create standards for that in the development agreement. It would obviously take additional expertise for us to engage in that, but it is not typical for us to allow the activity that they are trying to permit to occur before the mitigation. So it is better to prove that the mitigation has occurred and that that the hours can be expanded than to allow the expanded hours to exist while the range continues to investigate mitigation. We've been in that posture for the last 2 years while we've been talking about changes, and there has been no mitigation done yet. So this is kind of the next step to providing an incentive to mitigate and to encourage that outcome. I'd also just like to speak to the fact that they can continue to use the facility for other purposes. The ISA has explained during tours that I've made, and probably ones that you have been on as well, that they have social events and they have picnics and they have
cleanup days, and they have training. This isn't an operational, like you can't be at the facility. It is you can't shoot at the facility during that time frame.
Thank you. Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you. Director, thank you for all the work that you and the team have done on this. Before I ask my question on mitigation, I do want to acknowledge something on the record for us as a council that's come to our attention. While organized advocacy is entirely appropriate and welcomed and encouraged, attempts to pressure or influence elected officials to implied political threats or intimidation are not only not healthy for constructive civil discourse, but then it will impact our deliberation. So our responsibility as council is to deliberate independently based on facts, policy considerations, and long-term interests of the community. My question, Director, on the mitigation, while we're looking at being able to, if we were to amend the hours of operation, say, for example, for Sundays from 10 to 2, mitigation was put in place, noise mitigation was put in place, and then a gun range would be able to expand their hours again and find that workable solution to get to the yes. How long are we looking at for mitigation to be put in place? Is this something that could be done, I don't want to say relatively soon, because what does that mean when it comes to permits and new code and such? But what would a timeline look like?
So in the information that was shared from the gun range about their mitigation plans, the dates, I was actually surprised at how rapidly they thought that the mitigation could be constructed and deployed. In those documents, it had estimated timelines of 2027, 2028, so it was it didn't seem like it was going to be a big impediment for a long period of time if they were to go through the process and get it permitted and move forward. Is that the answer to it?
Yeah, thank you for that, because I know that the gun range has come forward in chambers and talk, that they've got capital investment ready to go, they've got plans ready to go, but what I wasn't clear on was what does that timeline look like? Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. I'm just going to jump us down to item 8 because it's still related and there's other topic items. So I just wanted to clarify the definition of the legal holiday. There's 2 answers in the staff response, and I'm trying to figure out which one. I think it's the noise holiday one that would apply here, which would be New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas Day. But can you just make sure I have that understanding correct?
Yes, that's correct. The current code uses legal holiday, and that is also applicable to construction noise. And those holidays are all observed, but there are some holidays that we also routinely see developers ask for a variance or want to work. And they're very oftentimes not holidays that are observed by a wide range of the population. So we actually identified the noise holidays, which the council could change as a smaller subset that would be absolutely no noise from construction or from shooting ranges. So that's what the definition is. The old definition is legal holiday is the one that we have previously observed.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Other comments on this matrix item? Councilmember Kritzer?
So I just wanted to clarify on the option that it seems like you were putting forward of us to consider, because in what we have before us would be the noise mitigation operating agreement option versus a development agreement. Can you lay out a little bit of the potential paths here and your opinion on kind of the benefits of one path versus the other?
Sure. Well, I think the concern with the mitigation agreement is because it was something that was a construct that we created for this circumstance, that both on the shooting ranges side and the public side, there was uncertainty about how it would operate and whether it would be durable. The development agreement is a process that's described in the zoning code. Ultimately, the approval is one that is by the city council. And at the end of the day, state law says that that agreement is contractual and that there are remedies attached to the any party's ability to break the agreement or to enforce the agreement. So that was viewed as a more durable solution than one that we said, yes, it'll just operate in the same way. We're calling it something different. So that was that would be one of the changes that we would suggest. The other thing just to remember too with the development agreements that we have said in the past, development agreements are not a mechanism to violate the code. Under state law, development agreements have to be compliant with the code, and our code replicates that language. So we couldn't create a situation where deviations from the code could be approved as part of the development agreement unless those deviations are specifically identified as appropriate in the code already.
Can you remind us if we got to the point of a development agreement, is that a quasi-judicial decision?
It is a quasi-judicial decision.
Councilmember Forsyth?
Just continuing on the development agreement conversation, the last time we saw a development agreement a couple years ago, and there were good neighbor agreements, community outreach that happened. Can you explain a little more about what that process would look like? And who covers the costs of those?
So that was a little bit different. That was not a development agreement. That was under our transitional housing and permanent supportive housing regulations that actually outlined the need for certain agreements, including a safety plan, like a health and safety plan, and an operational agreement, and a neighborhood community relations agreement. That is the last development agreement you saw was for Building 22, which is up in the Overlake area, where they were going to develop the property in phases and to basically the maximum density allowed. There were some deviations granted in that, but they were all deviations that were permitted under the code. And then in response to that, remember, they reoriented a driveway, agreed to essentially align it with a road that entered into the Sound Transit facility. So those are a little bit different standards, but in the development of this code, we could create an expectation that there be a community relations plan of some sort, if that's something that interested you. Remember that regulated businesses under the business licensing provisions actually have their own set of standards. So shooting ranges actually have a 5-year licensing window, and they have to meet several standards, including an operational agreement and several other things. There are no amendments to proposed in front of you to that code right now. It's in Title V. But if we were to go this route, it's likely we would need some amendments to that section just to cross-reference the two and make sure that they work together effectively.
I'll go ahead and chime in with just a couple questions because that is one of the connections here that I'm curious about. And I guess for the sake of simplicity, I'll say the question, this section D. Not only as it's currently written, the administrator is not required to enter in this agreement, and the proof that the mitigation works is ultimately on the applicant to hire the expert to prove that it has worked. So I wonder if this is the best place for this type of regulation to occur, or if it is in the business licensing, or if this is, in a sense, overprescribing, because without this, an organization who wants to do mitigation could still go do mitigation. What's the benefit, I guess, to the city of prescribing it this way? It sounds like we take on a lot of the burden of the work of negotiating toward an ultimate outcome, which likely we won't want to edit the part where we give up the authority to not enter into such an agreement? Those are some of the questions I have.
Right, sure. So it's not uncommon, and you'll remember this from the zoning code changes, for jurisdictions to set what I would call a safe harbor. And so you can do all these uses, you can do these things as long as you are operating this safe harbor. The noise control hours as the safe harbor. They can just do that. They are unrestricted in their shooting during that time frame, and they have to comply with the regulatory license. But oftentimes we also provide an off-ramp for if someone can do something equal or better. And you see that often in form-based codes where they don't focus on the use as much, but the impacts that it has on surrounding uses. And so this was kind of a similar model of giving a safe harbor, but saying that I think the community would be perfectly happy at this point, based on what I've heard, with the noise restrictions as they are and not having any mitigation taken care of. This is just the path to, if a gun range would like to take on this mitigation so they could have increased hours, it gives them a pathway. I think it could be either in the noise control code or it could be in the business licensing code. I believe that we're going to have to make changes one way or the other. So if you think it more effectively belongs in that location, we can certainly look at that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So I think I have a little more thinking to do on this mitigation piece. I want to reiterate something that you just shared and offered from my perspective to be able to close the first matrix item, and for the reasons that my name is attached to it. My name is attached to this first matrix item because for years we have been in conversation with community about this tough situation. And no neighbor, whether you're a business or a resident, has wanted at any point to be in this tough situation. I have had very tearful conversations with residents over the years. I have had conversations with representatives from the organization in the neighborhood, and it is really frustrating. When we first came back to this topic, I was surprised at the elimination of the Sunday provision, so that's what I included on the matrix here. And since we put that on the matrix at the beginning of May, I've been able to have more conversations with neighbors, some of whom I've been in conversations with for years. And lots of folks know that because my emails are all public record and they've been queried many, many times, as well as some of the newer folks who are reaching out. So many of those folks are not represented in the room tonight. Again, I do want to echo, as I did once before, for the members of the organization who are here, your presence is noted, and thank you for your active engagement in all of this. There is another group of people who have communicated very clearly that they do not feel comfortable coming to this room. And in those conversations with them over the last few weeks, they have shared with me that these hours are a huge relief, and the predictability of these hours is a huge relief. So for my part, I'm in favor of these hours and providing that assurance and beginning to take a step forward on this piece of the puzzle. There are a lot of pieces of this puzzle, but this feels like a really solid first step. So for my part, that's where I stand on this first matrix item. Are there other, Councilmember Parsi, thank you.
I just wanted to quickly go back to my previous question of further deliberations and city potentially assisting the two stakeholders in having deliberation to come to exact dates and hours that they might feel more comfortable about. If that is something that the staff would be able to do, I usually am in favor of deliberation because that's a pillar of our democracy, and I would love to see if that is something that we can support. I've heard from both groups that deliberation would be something that they're open to and they would welcome it. I understand that many also are not interested in that, but I would love to see if that's an opportunity that the staff can facilitate.
We can try a facilitation process again and see if that works. We also remember, as part of the early as part of some of the early Let's Connect work, we did have office hours, and we had all the 250 some odd comments from people that we culled through and provided to the council. If we can get willing parties to the table, I think that would be a good thing, and we would certainly be happy to facilitate that. But it has to be all the parties, even the ones that disagree with wherever we're going, because we can't kind of cherry pick who we talk to. So it'll be a little bit of an effort.
Thank you. Councilmember Procria.
Thank you. With regards to the allowed days and hours of operations and the connections between the maximal permissible noise levels and hours of operations, I have concerns with regards to this proposed ordinance on how binary it seems to be with regards to both hours and shooting itself. And I wanted to ask you about that. I know folks who work 9 to 6, 9 to 6:30 in Redmond, right? I have friends who work 9 to 6:30 in Redmond. And with regards to the hours right now, there would be no weekday in the entire year that they would be able to shoot at the gun range, right? And I understand that it is nice to have clean hours like that. And I want to make the hours predictable for the homeowners in the region. But what if we made it less binary and went towards, I'm just throwing something out there, it doesn't have to be this, some kind of staggered system where 1 week it's 9 to 6, the next week it's, maybe there's a couple days, there's a Tuesday and a Thursday where you can go until 8, right? So the folks who are working those 9 to 6 jobs can actually go out and shoot more than 0 days in a year on a weekday. And then I also have concerns with how binary we are treating shooting itself, right? And I don't think this is on the city to study itself. This would probably be on the gun range. But, there's probably a difference in noise when it comes to shooting a metal target compared to shooting wood or shooting a different kind of target with regards to the noise in the neighborhood. Right, so if we're going to go past 2 p.m. on a weekend, maybe we make it so that you can't shoot metal targets past 2 p.m., but you can shoot different kinds of targets. But right now, we're just limiting all kinds of targets. So I would love to see some more nuance in our hours, and I do agree with Councilmember Parsi that I would love to bring both parties together if it is possible to try and find that nuance that I don't think is 100% present in this ordinance as of itself.
Is there council response to the idea of staggered? Are there any comments on the comment that was offered? Councilmember Forsyth?
I know a lot of time and energy has gone into what's laid out in front of us, and especially pulling back on the no opportunities on Sundays and offering up the 10 to 2 opportunity. So I think that the staff has studied what that looks like. I myself don't have kids, but I'm just putting myself in the shoes of a parent who's trying to put their kid to bed at a predictable hour every night, and having different nights where, say, it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and you're trying to put your kid to bed at 7 o'clock, and there's still this noise. That's why I think the option of a development agreement where there's mitigation that happens is this more straightforward path to opening up more hours. So I'm not in favor of going down a staggered route right now, because I know the work that has gone into what we're seeing in front of us today.
Understood. Thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Parsi?
I am in favor of it because I think, and also I think in the form of putting the stakeholders, giving the stakeholders room to have that deliberation, I think this is something that I would like the parties to arrive at rather than have a prescriptive guidance from council, for example, because I feel like that's a solution that I would love to come from grassroots.
Councilmember Kritzer?
I appreciate the thinking, the creative thinking here. And I think also it is also incumbent upon us to pass policies that are easy to interpret and enforce, and to empower our community to be able to work with each other to resolve issues. But part of what we're passing here is kind of the baseline regulations for this. And so I think that predictability of being able to pass understandable regulations that are understandable both for the neighborhood as well as for the business, I lean towards having a set standard. Well, I continuing to encourage there to be some dialogue, I think, to Councilmember Parsi's point, would be great. I think the question before us here is what are we going to put as our regulations at this moment, and what kind of processes will we allow for? And I think being clear allows for more fairness to all parties.
Any other comments on the idea of a staggered policy solution? Councilmember Nueva Camina, Council Vice President.
Thank you, President. When I was listening, I appreciate the creativity. My question that came up was on how do we enforce that, and what then is the burden, where does the burden lie, and who's going to enforce it? And I appreciate, Councilmember Kritzer, your comment about clarity and what is the kindest way forward, and that's usually the clearest way, as being clear is kind.
I appreciate that. Councilmember Prakria.
I did have one comment, which is that with regards to this staggered idea I threw out there, it was hours are one way we could do it, but I did talk about two binaries, which is the hours itself and like types of shooting. So I'm wondering if there is interest in a staggered solution to maybe types of shooting. I'm not familiar with the different targets used in shooting and the different levels of noise, so I can't provide more context on this, but no, I do totally empathize with Councilmember Forsyth's comment that if you're trying to put your kids to sleep and you have to put them to sleep at different times, that might be very difficult. So I think the binary with regards to shooting versus not shooting and having that nuance was more so my point.
Councilmember Soni.
So first of all, thank you, Director Allen, because you mentioned that this is giving an opportunity. It's not just a dead end. It is definitely giving an opportunity for ISA to implement the mitigation plans and then reapply, to come forward so that it can work together with the communities and the residentials, like the families, those who are there. But at the same time, I do feel that there is no harm in having that dialogue once more, because it will just help both parties to have a resolution together coming onto the table, maybe this time with a different mindset to make it work, be a very solution-focused rather than just in terms of the problems, and talk about the mitigation plans, the timeline. So maybe if ISA can come up with a more robust plan of what they are thinking, bring it on the table, let the HOAs and the families, they listen to that. And if it works, and that would be a kind of a great path forward. If it's not still lying in that limbo, then probably we will have the solution to implement, which we have thought. But there's no harm in having a conversation one more time.
If I may, I'm going to call on myself and respectfully disagree. And here's why. I appreciate the intent of all of us at the table to make sure that we have exhausted the opportunities for great cooperation and to actually not have the city be in this position in the middle. I was a new council member 5 years ago when Councilmember Forsyth said to me, this issue over here, this is a big one, we've been working on it for years. That was 5 years ago. And finally, today we are sitting with a proposal in front of us with exhausted staff, exhausted community members, and I am looking forward to providing some amount of direction here in the next few weeks so that we can at least have a step forward toward solutions, plural. And I don't believe that it is very respectful to ask staff to try again after all of these years and all of the work that's already been invested. So for my part, I won't be supporting proposals to try again because we are 85% of the way to something here, and I'd like us to stay in the work and try for the something. Council Vice President.
Thank you. I agree with that. It's been an issue, not 5 years, but for the 3 years that I've been on. Councilmember Procria, you had raised a question about targets and wanting to get some more feedback. I can give you firsthand and years of time at a range, while when I hit a metal target, and I can't speak for other shooters in the room, when I hit a metal target, it is louder than when I hit a paper target, but for only a very brief moment. The sound of my firearm going off is still just as loud. So it's how much more noise? I think it's minimal. And that's just my experience.
I'm going to ask, are there more questions that folks have on these couple of topics? So far we've covered the proposal on the hours, the proposal on the mitigation and or development strategy. We got into the legal holidays, actually the now considered noise holidays, a smaller list. Are there other questions coming up before we also have a few other items related to noise ordinance that are actually not on this issue, but other issues around the city that we also hear about a lot? Other questions? I'm sorry, we do not allow public participation at this stage of the process. We do have a business meeting next Tuesday, and public comment is welcome at 7 p.m. The clerk puts the list out at 6:30 for folks who'd like to speak. Thank you. Councilmember Soni?
Yeah, I do have a question. It's a different from this. Just wanted to understand, are there any specific crane activities that are, are they going to be completely banned in the nighttime, or the developers can apply for some special permit in special kind of cases where this is required? Will that be allowed?
Councilmember Soni, do you mind if I put you first in line for after we move away from this particular noise issue? Okay. Other thoughts on this particular noise issue? Councilmember Procria?
I just want to thank Councilmember Novacamina, Council Vice President, for sharing her experience, and also state that for the record, part of the reason why I brought that up was it was in the HOA's complaints about the ISA were the metal targets. So I wonder if this may be an issue for them, and this is why I am interested in exploring this nuance, because I understand that when you're putting a child to bed at 9 p.m. or 8 p.m., a little bit more noise can be devastating, right? But also, if you're not able to use the gun range any day of the year, that could also be devastating for you. And it's probably better to be able to use the gun range and not use your preferred target than not be able to use it at all. But I also want to acknowledge that by no way or form am I trying to discredit the work that Director Helland and the Planning Department did. Very appreciative of the long history behind this issue. In my research, I've seen Seattle Times articles that go back all the way to 1997 on this issue. So I understand that it is a complicated and nuanced one.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, are there thoughts on direction related to hours and mitigation process. Is anyone else ready to offer some direction where they are? Or would we like to move on to the other categories of noise? Councilmember Forsyth.
I'm still intrigued by the conversation around the development agreement versus being in the business license. I didn't quite follow every nuance of that conversation, so I'm interested if other folks are interested in having more detail about that part of the conversation.
Definitely. I'll add on to say for my part, if we were to have a second touch on this, maybe having a matrix in and of itself that is current proposal, development agreement, business license proposal, and being able to study that a little bit would be personally helpful for me. I see a couple nods around the table, but are there other thoughts? That's just my suggestion. Councilmember Kritzer.
I'm definitely in the same place. I think before we would take action on this, I'd want to have clarity on the options there. And I think, I asked the question about the quasi-judicial decision. I just raised this as an interesting element. If we were to go down the development agreement route, just to remind council members that if we do that, it means that we wouldn't actually be able to engage and talk with the public about that decision. So I think we would want to weigh that if we were going to go down that route, which may be a tool that we would want to use, but I think we would want to do that thoughtfully. The current proposal to do, as far as I understand it, that wouldn't be bound by that, would potentially be a different type of process, at least for the council to consider it, or who is kind of the decision maker. I think sorting that out and potentially this third path within business license. I think understanding what is the path forward that we want to put out there for mitigating and allowing for extension and beyond what we would be passing here is definitely important to get right as we make this decision, in my opinion.
Thank you. So we are going to move on to some topics outside of this one, and Councilmember Soni is first in line with her question about cranes, but it does sound like, just in terms of staff direction, we would like an additional touch on this. We have some additional conversation amongst ourselves on the hours piece, and also we are interested in studying these three possible alternatives for the mitigation processing. Did I get that correct for everyone? Councilmember Parsi?
I was just wondering, was there any kind of, did the group want to proceed with a deliberation, or is that not something that the group is interested?
The whole deliberation?
To hold a deliberation for the stakeholders, for the staff to hold a deliberation. Is that something that the group
I heard 4 council members speak against that, so I did the math there, but happy to have you double check my work.
All right.
Yeah, okay. Councilmember Soni, you had a question about cranes.
Yeah, I was just wondering for the cranes, if there is a requirement to be used at the nighttime, can developers submit their special permits to get that permission, or it will be completely banned to be used at the nighttime?
So let me repeat your question because I'm not certain I heard it, but you ask about cranes, and that's crane assembly and disassembly, and you ask if developers could adhere to the normal noise hours but actually request a deviation to get the longer hours for crane assembly and disassembly.
Yeah, during the nighttime, in any special case, like, will they be allowed? That's my question.
Sure. So the origin of that change is basically coming out of the and now I'm forgetting the agency at the state, LNI. Thank you. That they actually created new crane rules after the crane fell in Bellevue and hit a adjacent building, that cranes have to go through different inspection protocols. Basically, we were having to approve a deviation from the noise control code for every time a crane got installed or disassembled, because the amount of time that it takes LNI to be on site, for the pieces to arrive, for the inspections to occur, couldn't fit within the construction timelines. So basically, we were having to issue a noise variance every time something happened that was required under state law. And that didn't seem very effective. So that was the origin of that request, was to allow the deviation for cranes so that they could occur without having to come for a variance.
Councilmember Forsyth.
On the same topic of cranes, are neighbors alerted when these things happen? And I'm guessing Councilmember Stewart could probably answer that, but is there a process, and is there more quiet work that happens in the 5 a.m. hours? How does that all play out?
So there are certain types of construction that do require expanded hours, pouring of continuous concrete floors, and also kind of continuous pours of concrete, cranes, things like that. They do actually come to us for a variance. Many hours associated with PSE or utility installations also fall in that category, because they typically are done at a time when businesses aren't operating, so it's not a problem to shut off the water or shut off the electricity. But anytime there's a variance issued, the person requesting the variance is asked to notify neighbors within a certain distance.
And then do you know if the early morning hours of a crane being set up are quieter, or is it just quite loud the entire time?
So generally, it's kind of setup and mobilization. So it's not super noisy at the beginning. What we have generally found is that people object more to being woken up than having things go later. So we tend to encourage people to do the noisiest work after 7 o'clock, and then be doing wrap up and clean up at later hours, because people will oftentimes stay up later, but not very happy when they get woken up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock by loud noises.
I think it was Councilmember Kritzer and then Councilmember Parsi. Councilmember Kritzer?
Actually, I will ask just Councilmember Parsi. I have one on the cranes. I have one on property maintenance that's adjacent.
Any other questions on the crane issue provided in the table? Seeing no other questions, Councilmember Kritzer, go ahead.
So on property maintenance, kind of similar, I guess, to what you were saying about the late hours, especially going all the way till 10. I know it was raised in the matrix about leaf blowers, for example. We hear about that a lot. And I think for that reason, going all the way till 10 on weekends, holidays seems quite late for the property maintenance category. So I'm just curious if you can kind of speak to that and any considerations we might make on that. It does also seem like a late time. I can understand on the cranes, the way you just described, kind of why you might have that variance, but in terms of people actually doing property maintenance, it feels like it's a late hour to me.
So this issue has, the noise code started as a code that was a model code developed by the Department of Ecology. That time frame has not changed since it was originally adopted by the Department of Ecology. The theory behind it is that somebody who is needing to maintain their own yards is oftentimes doing it after work and needs to come home and mow their lawn when our grass is growing 5 inches a day when it's sunny and rainy. And so that's why that allowance is there. It's for homeowners on their own property. It's not for contractors doing work on their property.
And where is the restriction on that within this code? That I guess I may just be missing it. There is a restriction in this code, I guess, is the question.
Okay, well, that is something we can correct in the code. Jeff just noted that it says, it doesn't say who, but what. I know in past noise ordinances that are in other cities, that oftentimes it allows more an allowance for a homeowner versus a contractor doing a work on their behalf, because the contractor can get their work done during the workday and a homeowner cannot. And if you'd like to see that change, we can correct that.
I would be interested.
If the whole council wants to see it.
I see thumbs up, and I'm also very supportive of that. So for our next touch, if we could see that, thank you. Councilmember Parsi.
This is a different item. I was wondering if we would be open to considering noise from exhaust tampering. This is something that has been top of mind for, I think we have an Eastside Safe Streets Task Force that is looking to address some of this. But I was curious if that's something that can be added for kind of both street safety and collision prevention, and also noise that I've heard general complaints about from from exhaust vehicle tampered.
So I will just say that during the development of the draft, we did consult with the police department on where's the proper enforcement for things like that. And at the time, concluded there were Washington Administrative Code provisions, as well as other provisions in our RMC outside of the noise control code, either in 10 or 12 or one of the codes dealing with vehicles. And we can follow up and provide specifics on that, but the conclusion was that that's addressed.
I saw a few hands. I'll go Councilmember Forsyth and then Councilmember Kritzer.
Just kind of going back to the property maintenance, that whole conversation led me to wonder if there could, ever has been a landscaping maintenance for our landscapers that are not, how we differentiated between household maintenance and large landscape, because I know we hear that conversation a lot, especially in the downtown core, about leaf blowers at 7 a.m., lawnmowers at 7 a.m., and to the point of people being woken up. They don't like that. Have we considered that or exploring that?
We can explore that, and we can distinguish those two things for you if the council would appreciate that, seeing something like that.
Seeing a majority of head nods on that one. Thank you. Okay. Councilmember Kritzer, and then I'll hop in maybe with my own question. Yeah.
I just thought I'd do a quick follow-up to note that exhaust tampering is illegal in Washington State. I think I've actually noticed our police has been doing, at different times, has been doing educational campaigns to alert people that this is illegal and not allowed, both in our jurisdiction and across the state. There's probably more that we could do on that, and I would be interested in hearing from our police on that. But I think in terms of the noise requirements, I don't know if we need that if we already are covered by state law, but I do appreciate the issue since I hear about it a lot from constituents.
Well, and it also has to do with who enforces. So the noise code is largely enforced by code compliance officers who would have no ability to enforce traffic-related provisions, or stop a vehicle, so they don't have the same tools as the police department does.
That makes a lot of sense, and this item certainly came up at our council conversations last week, so I think there was interest in enforcement campaigns similar to Click It or Ticket and the distracted driving and all of that. So I think we should come back to that conversation. I would support coming back to that conversation too. Yeah. I'm going to hop in with a related item to the property maintenance issue. So item 5 in the matrix, we did bring up gas-powered leaf blowers, and where we've been on this conversation is that someday it will be the right moment to take some possible action on here. And the memo just says that you'll have some updates for us. So I wonder if there's anything you have to share.
Yes, and thank you for the extra time to track down an answer. So we did consult with the Parks Department on this, and they are making strides to move away from gas wherever they can. There is not a equipment that is available to them that would completely replace the gas-powered leaf blowers that they have now.
Thank you. I think that is the reality that we did understand. I think maybe the question that council can wrestle with in the future is around residential leaf blowers. If the market has reached a tipping point where we feel like we can begin to create some policy on that. So thanks for the feedback, Jeff. Councilmember Forsyth and then Councilmember Parsi.
I just want to throw out the idea of what Kirkland did. I think 2 years ago, they did a program where they set aside some money to help landscaping companies and property owners to transition to electric leaf blowers. so that it wouldn't be such a big impact on those small businesses and community members that wanted to make that transition. So throwing the idea out there in case we want to explore something similar as a council.
Thank you. That's a great idea. Okay, other topics? Councilmember Parsi.
Is this an opportunity for us to also think about drone noise? Or is that again, yeah, so now that we're on the topic of noise.
I'd say, why don't we kind of create buckets for our topics? The noise code, as we've prepared it for you, is probably something that we can do some amendments to, and we're hoping to move it forward. We can always amend it again. But some of the things that you've mentioned are going to require additional stakeholder cooperation and facilitation so that we understand the impacts of them to them. As Jeff noted, for instance, our own Parks Department and Public Works Department, some of the things that are available are the electrical units are much heavier. And so one of the things that our operators can't do is they're running that equipment, 8 hours a day, and it takes a toll on the people who are actually running the equipment. We can certainly look into it, but I think that would be a separate work item.
Councilmember Forsyth.
I had the same question, especially when I read sounds originating from aircraft in flight. So definitely interested in the drone conversation as well.
Sure, and we can put that with the drone conversation. And I suspect you may hear some feedback about that at our next meeting, public hearing.
Great. Well, it does sound like we are headed toward an additional touch on this item, and we have collected a few pieces of information that we would like to see back. That includes the mitigation alternatives. The council has more conversation to have on the hours of operation for the existing gun range. We are interested in the bifurcation between residential and contractor property management as some of the ones that most likely we could get some additional feedback on. So unless there are other items that folks want to add for the next conversation or bring up tonight, council leadership will go ahead and work towards scheduling our next touch on this. Does that generally work for everyone involved? Okay. Thanks for your engagement, everyone. Let's take a 5-minute recess. So we will come back at 8:57. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Thank you. We will continue with our study session here at City Hall. The third item on our agenda tonight is the background on city grant funding for the automatic license plate reader program here in Redmond. We have a couple of staff with us tonight, including our city attorney, Rebecca Mueller, and our deputy director of finance, Haritha Nara. Before we hand it over to the staff, we thought it would be helpful for the listening public to just have a brief reminder about where we are in the process of this conversation. So I'm going to take just a moment very briefly to set the table. The automatic license plate reading program has been suspended since November 2025 per council direction. And over the last several months, city staff have been reviewing contract obligations with the vendor. Tonight, we're going to be not going to be discussing the contract per se, but unpacking some of the financial management questions that exist around the program. This includes the impact of potentially terminating a program that was originally funded by state grant dollars. So I'm going to pass it off to our city attorney, Rebecca Mueller, to kick us off, and then we'll have a chance to hear from the deputy director, who's been very busy on this issue, and we appreciate her hard work. So, Rebecca.
Thank you, Council President. Rebecca Mueller, City Attorney. You actually took most of the introduction that I was going to do, so.
We agreed this.
That's great. Just to support Council tonight and hopefully between Haritha and myself answer any questions on the grant funding to help guide your discussion tonight. And I will turn it over to Haritha to provide some background and some considerations for you this evening.
Thank you, Rebecca. I guess red is good. Okay. So I'm here today, as Council President Stewart had mentioned, just to talk about some compliance risks and audit risks that could come up with the grant funding, which we haven't seen any, so I will state that for sure. So my topic or my information today is going to cover three different topics. One is the grant compliance or audit concerns, and just general broad audit risks or concerns, and handling refunds or reimbursements, if there are any, from the vendor. Just for the listening public and council, you already know that this particular program, ALPR program, is largely funded by or supported by two grants. There are two state grants. One is WATPA, which is Washington Auto Theft Prevention Authority. They awarded about $44,000. And also the Washington Department of Commerce, where they awarded about $95,000. So both have been awarded and expended and reported in 2024. So to address my first topic on the grant compliance and audit concerns, we have directly reached out to the grant agencies, communicating to them about the closeout of this program and our contract. Both agencies confirmed that the grant funds were used for their intended purpose and that stopping this program does not create any compliance issues. So we are good there, so that's very good news for the city. And also, just to give you a little bit of detail on what they have communicated, Department of Commerce confirmed that their grant agreement is already closed in their books, and all the requirements have been met by the city, so there is no requirement to repay the funds that we have expensed in 2024. And WATPA indicated that they would only need a final report covering the statistics from the time of when the cameras were active. Now, I don't know how that report looks like, but probably it's more about the financial data that they are looking for just for the closeout of the grant. And their guidance was that if the city does not receive any refund from the vendor, we don't even have to repay them. But if the city receives any refund or reimbursement from the vendor, that's when we have to provide refund back to the WATPA grant agency. From an accounting and audit perspective, we don't see any concerns on the grant side or the grant funding side of it. These funds were used for their authorized purpose and intended purpose. The expenditures were properly expensed, reported in our in our 2024 financial report. So both grant agencies confirmed that discontinuing this program would not impact anything. So that's very great news for us. Coming to the second topic, which I have said, broader audit perspective, auditors typically do not evaluate whether we are making the right policy decision. They typically look into how we are reporting, how if this is authorized, if we have documented this closeout, if we are reporting properly in the financial reports, and if there were any refunds, if we are following the right process in refunding the grant agencies, if that is required by the grant agencies, which looks like VATPERT does require us to refund if there is any refund from the vendor. So auditors typically look at that, and we are already doing that. As we can see, we are discussing this. This is part of that authorization. This is part of that supporting documentation kind of thing, where they will look into it and see that we are doing all the due diligence before the closeout of this program and making sure that there are no financial or audit risks from these grant agencies. So that's what I found out from both grant agencies. Any questions on that?
Any questions from members of the council?
I'm nailing it these days. That's great. Yeah.
Councilmember Soni has probably the first question for you, Deputy Director.
No questions. This is a sigh of relief. Thank you so much for bringing this good news.
Yes. Well, there you go. Council Vice President.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Director, for the amount of work that went into going through and making sure that all of our I's are dotted and that our T's are crossed. And so thank you, because I know that was extra on your behalf. So
thank you.
Councilmember Kritzer.
I guess I will just elevate, because we have had questions from the listening public for a while of what is taking some of our time to be able to make any upcoming decisions since we put the pause in place on the program. And so hopefully for those who are listening, you can hear some of the due diligence that we did, just given the grant funding of this, to make sure that we're in compliance. And so just will echo my colleagues in expressing that appreciation, and that I think that gives us a path forward to make hopefully a decision on this topic now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from the council? Okay, seeing none, are there any final comments from the staff?
I will just add one piece that we are waiting to provide to council is information on a closeout package dependent on council's action and consideration. And so we will be working to get that to you as soon as possible.
Thank you. And I guess one maybe, I saw a hand maybe. Maybe what I'll ask is the closeout that was referenced, should there be no issues obtaining that to the city's satisfaction, is there council direction to schedule potential action? Councilmember Kritzer?
I would support scheduling council action to end our contract with Flock. Moving forward, I think we've heard a substantial amount of community feedback. The situation has changed from when we originally started this contract. We had quite a bit of discussion in the time in which we decided to put this program on pause. And I think given the current situation, and in what I have heard from our public, I support us moving forward to end this contract.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Councilmember Prakriya?
I want to say that I've put a lot of thought into this issue, and I think that there are a couple of other alternatives that I am interested in exploring. If there was a vote on canceling the contract with Flock, I would likely vote yes. But I think that, I would not be able to sleep at night if I came into council and made Redmond less safe. And I think there are material instances of cases where the technology itself did help make Redmond a safer community. And there are instances where it also damaged public trust in our council and eroded public trust in us too. I would be interested in exploring both terminating this contract and entering into an agreement with a different provider of ALPR technology like Axon. I would also be interested in exploring looking into amending the terms of our contract to add in some kind of poison pill with regards to data sharing, where any instance of data sharing would result in like a financial bonus for us or language like that. Just because I do believe it is a matter of when, not if, that there is a significant criminal incident in Redmond that this technology could have helped prevent it, right? And as chair of the Public Safety Committee, I don't want to be responsible for that. So I am interested in those other potential options. I'm not sure if there is interest from my colleagues. If not, then I would move forward with this vote on termination. But I wanted to bring this up to the floor.
Thank you. Other comments on possible direction to schedule action or responses? Councilmember Forsyth.
I am interested in moving forward with the cancellation of this contract. I am not interested in moving forward with a conversation around a different vendor. We've seen at the federal level that FBI is interested in obtaining all of that data, and that was just a study that came out very recently. I'm not willing to put the majority of our citizens at risk for those sorts of data breaches. And even if there were something like a poison pill and the city were to get money, that money should go back into our community who has been harmed, and that would just be a logistical and legal nightmare of figuring out how to go about that. So I know we have other programs that we've stood up that are creative. Our Drone as a First Responder program has done amazing things in helping us being able to find people and being able to catch criminals in the act as it's happening, just as the ALPR program was intended to on one level. So I'm looking forward to taking this vote and putting this to bed.
Thank you. Other comments on direction? Councilmember Parsi.
I feel similarly with Councilmember Forsyth. I am not comfortable with considering other options at this time, given the concerns that we have heard from the community. Also, I'm very invested in community safety. I think we have many other avenues that we're pursuing actively to address public safety, and this may not be the right avenue at this time. I'm willing to consider things later in future years, but right now I think I'm comfortable with moving forward with our decision.
Council Vice President.
Thank you. In alignment with both of my colleagues on either side of me, both Councilmember Forsyth and Councilmember Parsi, I'm interested in moving forward with making a decision on this. The time right now, total agreement with Councilmember Parsi on this. I don't think that right now is the time. And that this is just one of many tools that we have. We've seen a considerable decrease in crime over the past couple of years now here in Redmond. And I know that that also speaks to not just what we do here in Redmond, although we're doing some phenomenal work with our police department, but that also speaks to regional trends, because regional trends crime is down, and there's many, it's complicated as to what drives up or drives down crime. And right now, introducing another vendor would not bring me any peace. And I'd want to have more opportunities to rebuild and repair the trust that we had already broken from the community, and focusing on that. And we do have a very busy rest of the year ahead of us as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Soni, since we are going around the horn, if you'd like to share your perspective?
I'm also in the favor, like we are just coming out of a contract and we are not ready at this point of time to go for another ALPR or another contract while we figure it out, some more nuances around that. So I will not be supporting.
Thank you. And you are supportive of scheduling potential action? Yes. Okay. And I will wrap it up by adding my support for scheduling potential action when that last step is completed. And now, if that last step does get completed without issue, then council leadership will have the direction to go ahead and get that scheduled. Most likely as an item of new business is just kind of my hunch. But we will circle back and make sure everyone knows. Mayor Bernie.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion. Thank you, staff, for working on this. I know it turned out to be an extremely complex issue on a city side of things, but I did want to reiterate that during no time of when our cameras were active, that any data was shared with anyone else. And I want to reiterate that to our public. We had put in a very strong contract. We had monitored it very carefully, the use of those cameras when they were active, which they've been shut down for quite some time. But I just wanted to reiterate to the public that in no way was any data shared with any other entity without our knowledge, so nor outside of our jurisdiction. Just wanted to be very clear on that.
Sure, that's a great point. Thank you, Mayor Bernie. Councilmember Kritzer?
And I will underscore that point as well, and actually want to thank the chief as well as Director Marchand, who worked with us before we actually approved this program to create a data governance policy that helped to ensure that that data wasn't shared, which I think is really important and is something why we also went as a city and advocated to make sure that there was state policy as well that was passed for other jurisdictions to have similar types of support. From some of the things that we passed here. And so I think that's a learning for us as we think about future technology, is making sure that, and I know that our council is in discussion. We've been in discussion at committee, I think at the Finance Administration Communications Committee the last several months about our data governance policy, which will be coming back to look at data governance more holistically in our city, in addition to kind of data governance on police technology. So just want to kind of express that appreciation and recognize that I think for me, in terms of making this decision, is that it is also, I think some of the points some of my colleagues made and about our public's perception of safety and the potential for the protection of their data in the future. If in this moment it's also causing those who may feel more vulnerable in our community to not want to go out to seek resources or to feel comfortable being out in community, that's another reason why I think it makes sense for us to not have this contract at this moment as well, to ensure that everyone can feel safe and welcome here in our community, given the context that we see across the country. So just wanted to kind of clarify that as well.
Thank you so much. Any other comments on this matter? We will revisit it when it hopefully makes it to an agenda, a business meeting soon. And once again, thank you so much to all of the staff involved. Chief Lowe, it looks like, is online with us tonight. Deputy Coates also. And thank you, Deputy Director Nara, for all your awesome work. Appreciate it. Thank you. The last item on our agenda tonight is council talk time. Council leadership has just a couple of quick updates, if the group will allow, and then we'll open it up for the group. First, I wanted to let the council know that we were approached last week by communications staff for a meeting that was a little bit different than we expected it to be. So actually, we were asked for our feedback on how to prepare the council participation in Derby Days and the Downtown Redmond Art Walk. So great question, and Council Vice President and I gave some direction, but I also want to stop here and check in with all of you of what you think of the direction we gave, and to be able to circle back to the staff if there's anything else. So when it comes to Derby Days, for both of these events, our main line of feedback was build on what's already working really great. So for Derby Days, it's anticipated that the council booth area will be back on the City Hall front porch near some of our other commissions and other organizations. And for commissions that don't have their own table, like the Planning Commission, they'll be invited to also fill out the shifts with us. It was helpful last year to have commissioners right there because they're studying issues that they're more familiar with at the time. The high top tables, as well as having some resources. What I mean by high top tables, for those who weren't there last year, is rather than sitting behind a long table like this, we had some standing tables with resources on them. We gave some direction on what those resources, could be, and feedback opportunities. The budget survey will still be open, for instance, during Derby Days, so we can invite people to scan the code and give us their feedback on the budget. So then for the Downtown Redmond Art Walk, again, we previously discussed that the council is very interested in tabling for that event, so it'll be very similar hours. It's about a 3-hour period throughout the course of the event in the evening. We'll have some interactive piece. In years past, we've had the large coloring mural, and then we've actually been able to bring it into Chambers and take a cute photo with it. That's been a lot of fun. And again, having more resources and engaging folks on budget and other things. So for those 2 events, did we miss anything? Is there any other direction folks have on these events? Councilmember Forsyth.
Every year when we get and line up in the parade, we're like, next year we should do a float. So I'm bringing it up now because it's May and we have a little bit of time if we want to do something fun. I know last year a couple of us did a little different way to get around, so just wanted to open up the conversation in case we wanted to do something a little different.
Love the thinking on that. Other thoughts? Councilmember Prakriya and then Councilmember Soni.
Sorry, what's a float?
Oh, now I feel old. Maybe, are we allowed to have EVs in the parade this year? Is that, no, did that change?
You can only use electric vehicles.
Okay, so we can still use an EV, okay.
Yeah.
So we could decorate one of our EVs and have it be a council float, like decorated where we hand out candy, or we even pull maybe a trailer and have it even more elaborately decorated. I doubt we have time for that, but a float would just be something bigger than just us walking.
Councilmember Soni?
I've been in the parade through my nonprofit every year, so you can ask me. It's like, every year we think about a float, but it's super expensive. Like getting a proper float is always super expensive. I don't think so we'll have a budget. But what maybe one of the ideas is, we all should hold a value that we all stand for at the city, or the priorities that we are dealing with. So, affordable housing, environment sustainability, talk about transportation, like one of us going in a bike and talking about our transportation. So, we can all come with a variety of things that we can all represent with the different priorities and different values. So that could be just one of the suggestions.
I appreciate the creativity. Councilmember Kritzer.
Just going to build on the brainstorm here. I love that idea. And maybe building on Council President Stewart's discussion about inviting our commissioners. I think one of the things that happens sometimes with our council part in the parade is we're not that large of a number. So it looks a little sad compared to other groups. So we could invite all of our commissioners to join us. I think we maybe have invited them, but we could do a little more extra in addition to family and folks. But and then if we wanted to, I was thinking, as you brought this idea up, maybe we could do something like, we could each have a heart of a different color, and we could write something that we love most about Redmond, or that we are working, or that we're passionate about. And if we had other folks that serve the city all together, it could be like, what do you love about service, or something like that. I don't know, that could be a kind of cool idea. It could be different colors, create a rainbow.
I love all of this. Councilmember Forsyth.
I will say, I rode a bike last year. Do not advise. Far too slow to stay upright.
We've had this experience in a few different ways. I will say, actually, I'm so glad there's interest in inviting the commissioners to the parade in this brainstorm that Council Vice President and I were having with the communications staff. We did actually throw it out there because the commissioners love to be involved. We love to have FaceTime with them. Even being able to work with our planning commission tonight was a ton of fun. So we did ask staff to kind of query if that would be of interest, but if there is council support for that, we can build on that idea and ask staff to make sure everyone feels invited. Okay, so let us know if you have other thoughts on those two festivals and how it might be helpful to set you up for success. I believe either Uni or Mary from the executive office are going to be sending around an opportunity for you to schedule yourself into these shifts as they come up for, again, both July and September. Quickly wanted to just touch base and say thank you once again for all the council members who attended, everyone for attending the council conversations last week. Idlewood, I know we all had awesome conversations. I copied you in today on our attempt to just say a very brief thank you and provide a couple follow-up resources to those who we had conversations with. I know lots of us are doing individualized follow-up as well, but wanted to open the floor if there are any conversations about feedback, lessons learned on this one, and thoughts for September, because the communications staff are very interested in how we might like to use our final council conversation of the year. Councilmember Parsi.
Is this an opportunity for us to consider kind of having a budget theme to bring people in and kind of we talked previously about involving the public in the budget, and we didn't have too many touch points with the public on that. So I was kind of curious if this is an opportunity where we can consider having a theme.
Thank you. Are there thoughts on that? We've recently discussed this, I think. So, Council Vice President?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great topic that you brought up. It's something that we had, council leadership had discussed about what is the timing of it. And the concern was that if we do it in September, then we're so close to deliberations that we rather get that input sooner so that we've got a pulse on it, so we've got a better opportunity to redirect, so that if we are kind of diverging from what the community feedback is, if we start getting that information sooner than September, then we've got a better likelihood of implementing that feedback that we had. And then we started exploring options such as making sure that there's an opportunity for the community to engage with us specifically on the budget at tabling events such as Draw It for the Art Walk, as well as Derby Days. And it will be in further communications that are outgoing that council is looking for that feedback.
I saw other hands. Councilmember Procria.
Sorry, this is unrelated to the comment on the budget. Is now the time, or?
We're talking about council conversation.
Okay, it's about council conversation. Yeah, I had a great time at council conversations last Thursday, and especially compared to the first one, I had a significantly higher proportion of folks who were just walking around their neighborhood, saw the signs, and then said, "Oh, council's holding conversations. Let's go in here." So I would love to have that same kind of wayfinding to the council conversations that we had at the one on Thursday. The first one was held at a school, and you probably wouldn't be going to a school at 7 p.m. except for this specific thing. But maybe if you were walking by and there were signs in the neighborhoods that pointed towards it, you would go. So I would love to have that same kind of wayfinding.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Forsyth.
Just going to double down on that. I think the ones we've done in the parks have been much more casual. People are speaking more freely, and I think that really just hits at what we're trying to accomplish and being accessible to our communities. So I think the ones that are more free-form like that would be the way I would like to lean.
Great. Councilmember Kritzer.
I agree. And I would say to the point around focus areas, I think when we first started these, we did try one time to have each table have a different topic. And we have moved away from that, but we might try that again in a future one. I think it could be interesting. Because I think actually the one thing is that it seemed like we did the rotation, but then at some point the rotation stopped and we were just kind of chatting with people. But we might be a little more motivated to actually like try to do the rotation if, you know, everybody would get a chance to be at the transportation table or be at the housing table or, you know, whatever. So that just might be interesting to kind of focus. At the same time, I think, for example, this last council conversation, it was really great that it was mostly people who really live in that neighborhood, and we got to hear what was on their mind about that neighborhood. So it's nice to not have so much structure. So I guess I'm kind of arguing against my point, but I think it could be interesting at some point to try a council conversation where we add that structure in and see how people react.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, in pretty short order, we will need to give direction on date and location. So if you have specific ideas, please be in touch with council leadership. And it's certainly on our to-do list. And we need to get going on that in short order so that we can get places reserved and get the communication plan up and running and all of that. So thanks so much. Thanks so much. We'll consider it kind of an open conversation, but one we're going to make some decisions on pretty soon. So let us know if you have thoughts. Other items for council talk time. Mayor Bernie has one.
I did recall that I just wanted to share with the public, we have a lot of really very fun and exciting things happening in the next few months. So on Monday, we'll be raising the Pride flag at 9 a.m. On the 12th of June, we'll be unveiling a special piece of art in Downtown Park. We'd love the community to come out. We have World Cup happening around us starting soon, and there's a lot of really great watch parties and opportunities with a final event at Marymore Park on July 19th midday, where we're calling it Meet Me at Marymore, but there's gonna be music and the game to watch together. Bring your family, there'll be food trucks. Really exciting. We think we have the Redmond High School Marching Band to kick us off. So all those things are really, I think, going to make a great summer. We're also celebrating America's 250th birthday, and we have a week of volunteering coming up early in June. If people want to join us, you can look on our website for that as well. And then Derby Days this year, because of World Cup, is a little bit later. So it's, I think, the 24th of July. And 25th, so mark your calendars for that. So we're gonna just kind of stretch out the summer fun. And then the Redmond Art Walk is in September, so usually September's lovely. So I hope that to see people out and about. We'll also have other programming, the Rockin' on the River series and things like that. So I hope that our community's out looking at our calendar and finding ways that they can come out and, you know, support through volunteering, come out and cheer on a team, and just be part of our community. It's going to be a wonderful summer.
Thank you. I saw other hands. Councilmember Soni?
If you're having an art walk and the council will be already available to meet public, then having another council conversation in September, isn't this going to be too much together? Or because I just heard for the public art, for the artwork as well, so.
My recollection, and I'm happy to be corrected if this is incorrect, but I do believe recently at a committee meeting, the staff approached us if we would like to participate in Draw this year, and this issue was raised. And my recollection is at that time, council gave direction that we did want to do the booth, as well as a council conversation. So that's how I remember it, but the prior direction we've given, but if it does feel like too much, then we should have that conversation soon. Yeah. Councilmember Parsi?
A different topic. I know that Councilmember Forsyth previously had raised a councilmember social media policy. I believe it did not kind of get finalized, but there is a working draft that is available. I wanted to see if we would be interested in reviewing it or considering it for kind of further steps, or sharing it as guidance with new council members and kind of the group as a whole.
Councilmember Forsyth?
I can elaborate on that. Hopping back 1 second, I'm in support of rethinking the council conversation because September does get very full with all of those events. But going back to this conversation, yes, Councilmember Kritzer and I, when I was president, worked on, and she was vice president, worked on the social media draft policy. And at the time, we got it to a place where we all looked at it, but there was, I don't recall if there was the momentum to actually fully adopt it. We just kind of had it as a working agreement. But I'd be happy to, I just found it in my email. And thank you to Director Maher for also finding the copies of it to send over. I'd be happy to send it to folks or have maybe Uni send it to folks so we're not creating a serial meeting to review and to look at to see if it's something that folks want to take up again or not, depending on council leadership's direction.
Let's hear. Is there interest in adding to deliberating and adding this onto our work program and how we might decide to do that? Councilmember Kritzer?
If I remember correctly, and I guess I still may be in this position, I felt like we just needed resources to have kind of guidance and support to be able to do it, almost more than agreeing on like a kind of a set policy that we have to pass. But I do think one of the things we had hoped for was to be able to just have support for city staff, like for onboarding, for example. I remember when I was a new council member, I wasn't sure how to set up my own social media, what are the rules, was looking into what other people did in other cities. So just having a really kind of clear set of guidance. And I believe I've been kind of using what we got at that time as the way to do my own social media. At the moment, for the listening public, we don't have any staff that do our own social media. We all do it for ourselves. So, I think making sure that we all have this, and if we want to have a conversation about it or ask any questions to the experts on our staff, I would support that. I don't know if I feel strongly about like passing something.
Thank you. Any other thoughts before round 2 on this topic? I'll say I appreciate actually the context and the memory on that. I believe Jill Green had that conversation with us, so it was a while back. And I'd want to be super clear on like what a policy is solving for, but we do have a lot of resources. It could be helpful to see this again, as well as the resources from our professional organizations, like the trainings available through the Association of Washington Cities and the like as additional resources. Councilmember Forsyth, round 2 on that?
Jill Smith, but yes.
Oh, wrong Jill.
I did the same thing when trying to
Jills are great communicators at the City of Redmond.
When trying to find the email, I did the same exact thing. I do think that was good for my recollection, Councilmember Kritzer, that we did say this is our guidance, but it apparently did not make it into the new onboarding materials. So that's how the conversation came about. So maybe we do just get that added to our onboarding materials. So it's not necessarily a set policy, but it is if you're going to do it, here's how the city would like you to do it so that we can keep proper public records.
Mayor Bernie?
Thanks. Yes, if there is an interest or if this is a priority of the council, I know you talked about priorities also with a lot of the like budget work and things like that. But if you're fine with the way it is, then I'll work with the team to make sure it's distributed to everybody and put in our onboarding materials. If you're interested in reviewing again and doing work on it, then that's probably a different conversation.
Thoughts on that? The offer to include it, Councilmember Parsi?
I read quickly through it, and I think it looks very good. I think it could be added to onboarding document because it's far better than nothing. So I'm okay. I think that's a step towards the right direction.
Okay, great. Since we have this offer from Mayor Bruni, would we make sure that it gets to the executive office and COO files? Thank you, Mayor Bruni. Really appreciate that. And thank you for bringing this idea forward. Other items for council talk time? Councilmember Forsyth?
Sorry, just wanted to highlight one conversation I had at the council, our community council conversations with the community member who had had a stroke and worked with one of our parks staff and honestly became incredibly rehabilitated through her work with that trainer. And she brought up the fact that that person is only part-time, and I just wanted to float the conversation around, in my view, that is kind of the point of our senior and community center, is to have those kind of resources there where our senior community can come and get care and fitness classes that are specifically developed for our older community. So wanted to bring up the potential of having a conversation around if that position could move to full-time and what that would look like in our budget conversations. So just wanted to lift that up.
Thank you. Councilmember Soni.
I also came across one special request for Redmond Downtown Park. It's like, during summers, there is no shade and shelter. So it's not much used at those peak hours, while that is like, the kids are there. So if there is a way for us to create some kind of a shading in those areas, that will be very helpful. That was a community member's request.
Understood. Councilmember Parsi, did you have one last one?
I had a follow-up to Councilmember Kritzer. I also spoke with the same resident, and I think it would be really important to me as well, hearing from the fire department that the senior community, we have a growing senior community that needs support. So I think it would be really important for me to also understand, to make sure that the support that we're providing to the public needs to be expanded, and if so, I would be in support of that as well.
Thank you. So I think this resident spoke with many of us at the event and also communicated with us via email. It does sound like there's maybe a couple volunteers to actually go and ask staff some questions. So Councilmember Parsi is nodding. So we would love to have you go speak with staff, share the feedback that we all heard, and ask some open-ended questions about how the programs may already be in the works. We only saw baseline budgets so far, so we actually have no idea what staffing changes may be coming through the preliminary budget. But now is a good time to just check in, and potentially there's some alignment there. But starting with a conversation with the staff is probably a good first step. So thank you for taking that one on, Councilmember Parsi. Yeah, Councilmember Mayor Bernie?
And I was just going to remind everyone, when you do reach out to directors, please CC me on the email so I kind of know what the conversations are, so I can connect in case there's multiple ones happening.
Yes, and Councilmember Kritzer.
Yeah, and I will say it's always so wonderful to be able to actually hear about the impact of our city staff on people's lives. And I think that was a really cool takeaway I had from the conversation with that resident. I'll also say, I shared in talking with that resident that it is in our power to budget and establish more money for positions, and it is also within the administration's purview of who is hired into those positions. So I think that is also important for us to be aware as we have conversations on this as well. And noting that there may be very special individuals that we wouldn't be able to just extend one particular person's position. But I think it's just really amazing that our staff are touching people's lives like that, and appreciate their service to our community.
Great, thank you. All right, seeing no other hands, that concludes our agenda for tonight, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.